So right off the bat, let me say, on my ArtStation page, right here, there's going to be a series. There you go. There's a series going to be covering what I'm going to talk about here up front, and then on my YouTube channel here, the Real Illusion Character Creator and ZBrush. I'll probably have to rename this, but here is the playlist. I'm going to put these right here, right at the top, because we're going to talk about 3D printing and posing a little bit, which we've done before. And then we're going to do some 3D print cleanup, I think. So, anyway, let's open some files. When I'm going back and forth between, and if you missed it, I should mention this too, videos. Here is the live stream from here's a live stream from Tuesday that talks about the Character Creator ZBrush workflow. We're going to use Character Creator and ZBrush in a more 3D printy fashion today, like I just shared with the other stuff too. Cool. So, okay, and also let's let my brain kick in real quick. Okay, I'm ready to go, kind of. So, when we're hopping back and forth between, let me just open a file here, ZBrush and CC. The first thing I usually do if I'm starting fresh is go in here to Preferences, go Z, and then clear my cache files, just in case there's any files sitting out there that have the names of things I'm going to be using, because when I'm sending the base body over, I'm reusing the same names on objects, and I don't want it to get confused. And then, goodness, Character Creator, we're going to do, I guess we'll start with, we'll do the Goblin, that's a fun one. So, 3D pieces, 3D print, there it is. Z tools, decimated. Okay. So essentially, so on the ZBrush side, sorry, we have gear working. I know I have one. There it is. So there's two kind of separate files that I use. One is I have a file set up for 3D printing that is essentially, let's go in here to all high. It's my character model. However, this isn't the character model that has, you know, everything broken up so I can go through and bake it. I guess I'll load up both of these files so you can see the difference. Let me see. So I just loaded a Z project. Biggest difference, one of the things about Z projects is when you go to save a Z project, it's not gonna rename that first node. If you go in here to Tool Save As, it'll rename your first node. It's not a huge deal. You just got to go in here and say, insert Polymesh 3D star. Let's say it could be anything really. I'm going to put this at the very top of my mesh here. We're going to scale this down. We're going to go into transparency mode here. And so now I've just got this star kind of buried in the character, like so. And this can be a name catcher, and I can use it for like IMM brushes and anything that doesn't, that shouldn't have subdivision history. I can just use that as a proxy placeholder. And when I go in here to Tool Save As, that first, it'll catch the name. Of course, if I was to go Z everything over, I could do all and just send over a null node, but you can also just have the visibility turned off and then just say go Z visible, or go Z if you just want to send one thing over. But anyway, that's the biggest difference. So what I'll usually do is I'll have instead of a tool save as, I'll do a file save as, and it'll be a Z project. The thing about Z project you need to be careful of is if you have a bunch of crap out here where you have like other tools loaded or reference tools or old versions of tools, it'll start stacking up in here. So if that's the case, you can always go through here and just say delete all on any of those stacks of subtools and then just get rid of them so it's not bloating your file saves. So anyway, file save as, and I'll have a version of the file here for the 3D print model. Now, like I was saying, the 3D print file that I'm going to send over is a little different than like a game res file, because this isn't a real game res. Kind of is. If I go here to all low, so all high, everything looks good, right? If I go to all low and I zoom in, and in fact, I'll go all low and then I'll go down here to merge visible, you're going to see that this, if I go to all low on all of my subtools, I end up with something that is, you know, it's not game res, it's 226,000 points. However, it is low enough for me to send over to Character Creator, have it rigged, animated, and ready to go. So, and in fact, now that I mention all of that, so like I was mentioning in here, like, hey, here's the setup. In this setup, what I ended up doing was going through and using ZBrush to send everything over. So in these videos, we're in ZBrush, we're UVing in ZBrush, we're sending things over in ZBrush. But that's when I was starting with arbitrary base meshes and rigging with AccuRig. What we're going to be doing this morning is we've already set up this Goblin to be animated. So, and I was kind of confusing, and that wasn't really, don't have a real outline prepared to say this in a non-confusing way, but this file that I have set up here is for my 3D printing file. So essentially, if I alt tap on any of these objects over here, like for the shoulder pad, for example, and I zoom in, it has a low-res version that is connected to a high-res version. So here's subdivision level 4. Here's the finished final high-res version that I can go to 3D print with. And then here is a low-res version that I can send out of ZBrush, and it's few enough polys to where I can bind it to a skeleton and have it be performant and move around. Not super performant, like it's going to run at 60 frames a second or anything on a console, but performant enough for me to move these low-res verts around so I can send it back over to ZBrush as a pose and then refine that pose for my 3D print. So, and for, you know, just like this example here, is it's moving around these low-res verts. Same process as if you're going to go in here to Z plugin, Transpose Master, and send over a Transpose Master Z-Sphere rig. Speaking of, give you some more resources here. Playlists. If you go into ZBrush 2023, what's new? Right here in this section, Proxy Pose, Transpose Master, Z-Sphere Rigging, Project History, Refresher. All of those will talk to you about that process, transpose mesh, posing your object in natively in ZBrush. Thank you. Excellent, cool, awesome. Good to hear, John Yu. Thanks for showing up. Thank you, Mario. Place you have direct link to your streams. I just assume it goes to, that's a good question. I want to say every video I post on YouTube, it's been a while since I've looked, but Twitch TV, I guess it streams to Facebook maybe, and then just here on YouTube. But I honestly don't know how my stream is. As sad as it sounds, I don't know that much about my personal streams. Sorry about that. I should probably figure that out. Why not use Blender to posse rendering texture? I don't know what that means. You can use whatever you'd like the texture, I suppose. Way to export OBJ or FBX with a multiple named part as one mesh. Not an OBJ, but an FBX, sure. That's natively, the FBX natively supports that. Without getting multiple texture sets. Oh, okay, so yes, FBX you can. Out of ZBrush, as far as I know, you cannot, because you can, basically the material sets, or the texture sets are driven by material assignment. So what I'll do is I'll export it out of ZBrush and do my material assignments in another program, Max, Maya, Moto, Blender, Cinema 4D, doesn't really matter. And then also any normal tweaks or UV tweaks, I'll just do in an external program, and then I'll send that FBX over to Painter. So yeah, natively from ZBrush, no, I don't know how to do that, but in another program, yes, FBX is your best bet. Yeah, absolutely. Show me what you're doing with Magma. We can do that. YouTube or Max on Mac tablet. Oh, that's a good. Honestly, I don't even know. I guess on YouTube, Facebook, 7 more links. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure what it would be. Cool. So, and we can talk a little bit more about texture set assignments and UDIMs as we move forward too. So this is my 3D print file setup. I have a low res. So the difference between that is also kind of similar to what we're talking about with texture sets, which is if I'm doing a game res, so let's go ahead and say load tools from project, I'm going to load up my gear file. Actually, it might not even be a ZBrush or a Z project. It could be gear working. Sorry, I'm a little disorganized, more disorganized than I usually am, but I found it. So let me cancel that, and let me load up this. So this is our 3D print file, and separately from that, for my GameRes stuff, I have a high-res that I export out. So my high-res is broken up like this, where I have like, here's shirt 01, shirt 02, shirt 03. It all gets baked to the same shirt high low res, but all of these get baked separately so that I can go through, and again, this is a very inefficient low res for sure, but I have these all separated out by name, so shirt 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that they'll all bake separately from a namespace, but then I can combine the low res later together and then have all of these be one low res. However, this is an entirely arbitrary process. You're going to see I don't have subdivision history on these because I don't care about that. That relationship of, oh, here's my low res and here's my high res does not matter when I'm baking from a high res file to an arbitrary low res file in Marmoset or Substance Painter. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, gear export high _ high as an FBX. It'll keep all of these names. I'll do export visible in my settings. I'll have polypaint turned on, so I'll bake by polypaint to my material ID. Then I'll have a separate low res file that is maintains the same names. It's a low res version of these, and then I'll export those as a completely separate FBX file. There's no relationship between them. Then I'll load both of those into Substance Painter, bake high to low, and then I'll have my game res. Now, that's the arbitrary high to low process. Let's say delete all, sorry. However, in this process, the 3D printing process, I do need a relationship because, a subdivision relationship, because I'm going to move around these low-res verts with a skeleton, and then as those low-res verts shift position, I can bring them back into ZBrush, and those low-res verts will move this into place wherever the bones end up saying they need to go, and then it will retain my high-res subdivision history so that I can 3D print it. So that's the difference between those two file types. Now, you'll also see I have this broken up in ways that make sense, like the shoulder pad by itself. Hey, subdivision level 4, all these, and this is made up of, you know, sometimes hundreds of pieces, but they all manage to get down to a low res subdivision level 1. That's, you know, I could probably pop this one out and make it lower res, but, you know, they all have the same subdivision history basically, and it works fine as a single object. You will see in here I have other stuff like this, where I basically, when I'm doing my 3D printing stuff, instead of worrying about like, oh, here's the shoulder pad, here's the boot, here's the whatever, I break it up by subdivision history. So for example, F subdiv 2, these are all the objects in my scene that are go to subdivision level 2. These are all of them that go to subdivision level 3. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm not even really worried about stuff like this, because I can always change the weights. So normally I'd bring something like this over as an accessory, parent it or parent constrain it to a bone, and that bone will move around this entire object, as opposed to what it is now when I send it over with these other objects. It's going to be bound to the skeleton across multiple joints from the elbow to the wrist, and then any twist joints in there in the forearm. All of this is going to be bound. Of course, I can go through and paint the weight so that it is essentially rigid bound to a single bone, but in this case I'm probably not going to care that much. All of these objects can be bound to a skeleton, and you know, here's all my subdivision level 5 objects, and the reason why is so I can go, hey, all of these objects that I have in my scene manage to have 5 subdivision levels. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to put them all together, merge them all together so that they all live in the same subtool, but they will have a low res subdivision I can send over. You don't have to do this. This might just be a me thing, but this is how I decided to keep my file manageable and readable and send overable for posing. Now, having said all of that, like I mentioned in my videos here, I just send over everything. I send over the body, I send over the accessories. However, our workflow has been, and let me also explain this, I have a 3D print file ready to go, and what I mean is when I go in here and say preferences, clear my cache files, you'll notice that everything's named nicely, and I have these named very specifically. This base body, CC base body, eye occlusion, eye winker, etc. All of that came over from Character Creator from their base body setup that we did in Tuesday's live stream. So if I open that up, I'll have a corresponding, I have my ZBrush file, and I'll have a corresponding pose file in my Character Creator setup. So I'm going to say open up in the right folder here. 3D print. There we go. Okay, I'm a little more organized on this side. So ZBrush, I open up my 3D print file. It's got all of my subtools with low-res subdivision history. It has a relationship for every subtool. It's all named appropriately, and it has my base body that I sent over. And then if I want to sync these two files, what I'll do is I'll go back into ZBrush, and I'll say in this case I can say go Z all, because I'm sending everything over, and everything over here has a corresponding mesh with it. Now, when I was kind of stumbling through earlier, and I'm continuing to stumble through, is when I said I sent everything over from ZBrush, including the body. You don't have to do that in here. What you can do is you can toss the body back and forth and update the body, and then you can go in here and turn off, so hold down shift and turn off the eyeball for like all of these pieces here, all of the pieces except for all the body stuff. You can export these separately as an FBX and bring those into Character Creator as accessories. You go in here to create, and then you say create an accessory, and then you import your FBX of your exported tools. However, that's essentially how I this is going to sound weird. So for the 3D print file, I do use GoZ just so that I can, you know what, I'm not even sure if I have it plugged in. Oh no. I have to go through and do a plugin install. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to I'll do a workaround. But watch these videos. It'll show you the ZBrush Pose Tools plugin that I don't have installed right now because I was doing some reinstall stuff yesterday. So for 3D printing, I take it back. I do send over everything in the ZBrush 3D print file. I send that all over through here. However, I originally started with no clothes and no accessories, just this base body. So this is what I've been sending back and forth, just his naked base body. And then when I want to do my 3D print file, I'll go through and I'll make sure I have subdivision history, everything's named appropriately. I'll turn everything back on, and then I'll relink. I'll relink by going go Z all with everything turned on. That'll send over the base body. It'll relink the base body and go, oh, I know what this base body is. You started in Character Creator. You send it to ZBrush. It's already rigged. It's already weighted. All the facial animations, shapes are working with the face. Everything with the face and the body is exactly what I would expect it to be. All this other stuff that it doesn't know what to do with, it automatically, when I say go Z all, and it doesn't exist in here, because let's say we just, let's just do it and delete this. So this is what we've been passing back and forth. This is essentially my game res body. However, I want to do a 3D print version, so I go to my 3D print file and say, okay, here's my game res body. I can relink all these names that it sees. However, I've got a bunch of new stuff, so if I say go Z all, that'll throw everything over at the it'll drop everything to the lowest. It'll throw it over, and you'll see it'll default to update for all the things it recognizes. Hey, the body, I know what that is. You sent that over before. I will update based on your file and your vert positions. I haven't changed those vert positions, so it shouldn't do anything. All this other stuff is going to default to, looks like create cloth. That's fine for all the subdivision stuff. That's going to be bound to multiple joints on the skeleton, on the body. So I'll go ahead and keep those as create cloth. Things like the backpack can be an accessory, because in a backpack, or by his backpack is that big wooden crate thing on his back. That's never going to bend. It's never going to be like, oh, when his neck goes forward, I want the crate to also bend, the top of it to bend forward. Like, those are just solid bound objects. So things like the backpack, the axe, the helmet, the shoulder pad, the pouch, all of this stuff can be an accessory, which is, again, the difference between a cloth and accessory. Clothing is bound to multiple joints across the skeleton. Accessories are just a single object usually, or it's just something that's going to be bound to just a bone, and that bone's rotation will drive where this object goes. You don't need to worry about weights across multiple bones. Anyways, we'll say current pose. We're not adjusting anything, so we'll leave that off. So I think we're good. We'll go ahead and say update. That's going to say, okay, all the base body stuff, we're going to look at your vert positions, compare it with ours, and update as needed. It shouldn't move anything. All this other crap we're bringing in, it's going to bring it in as clothing. It's going to transfer the weights from the body to the clothing mesh, and then it's going to create an accessory, or create an accessory for all the other stuff that I can then bind to a skeleton. Whew. Now, back to what we were talking about with the arbitrary meshes, where I export my high and then I export my low and then I bake those together by namespace. If I'm doing that, I won't use GoZ to send the files over from ZBrush. I'll say, you know, I'll be in Max Maya Modal Blender Cinema 4D. I'll be doing low reses and normals, setting my normals and doing my UVs and exporting that stuff separately as far as the gear is concerned. And I know this is all confusing. I'll have videos after ZBrush Summit on my YouTube channel for all this, but anyway, that's the high-level difference. So we've brought over our low-res meshes for our 3D printing, and now we have, and this is where I would go, okay, File, Save Project as 3D Print, you know, Goblin 3D Print, CC, and then for my ZBrush file, I'll name it Goblin 3D Print ZB, and then those two files are what I'll use to sync up. So if I want to do more poses or come back in here and do whatever, I have a file that I'll have synced up just like this, and it'll recognize what it's already brought over. So anyway, everything's looking okay. The accessories, sometimes what you have to do is go in here and reset their position a little bit. The clothing looks like it came over fine and transferred the weights fine. So for the accessories, we're going to do a little bit of work. So here's where you can, so the clothing all got shirts, icons, and that indicates it is a clothing object. However, you can also go into, like for example, this loincloth. So we'll grab loincloth here. Instead of getting the skin weights transferred from the legs, which is what it would be by default, I can go in here and say, hey, transfer my skin weights. And instead of using legs, we'll use dress. And then we can apply that. That will transfer the skin weights from a dress weight file, I suppose, and then copy the skin weights to this object. Same thing for gloves and shoes. You can go through here and say, you know, if I had this broken up as gloves and shoes, you could totally just transfer skin weights. And you would even see that usually it changes. Did I do it right? Or did I say save? Apply and close, dress, apply. I guess it just does it. Sometimes these icons will change. So shirt, shoes, gloves, pants, it'll change that icon based on what area of the body you transfer the skin weights. In this case, I'm not going to do that because I don't have that set up. I just have subdivision 4, 5, 2, and 6. It should work fine. And I am going to be adjusting the final result in ZBrush anyway, so I'm not overly worried. The thing I'm more worried about is like the accessory stuff. It looks like all the accessory stuff needs to move forward basically, so I'm just going to grab all the accessories and hit W, and I'm just going to scoot them all forward. Now I can do this on an individual basis as well. And you also know this pivot is down here, so we're going to do two things with our accessories. Number one, we're going to select our helmet accessory, and we're going to go all the way down here. We're over here in the Modify panel, Attributes, and we're going to pick a parent. So right now it's at the base hip. I want to parent it to the head joint. Just go in here to pick parent, go generally in the head area and click. It'll give you base head. If it doesn't, just click in here, and you can just choose what bone you want to assign that to. So again, we've picked a parent. That parent is the head, and we're also going to set the pivot. I'm going to quick set here, the pivot to the middle. Then I'm going to go in here to edit pivot, and we'll just move that pivot down to vaguely where the head joint is. It's not that important, but hopefully. So we'll go out of edit pivot mode, and we'll do the same thing for the backpack, only the backpack is parent is going to be so attach, pick parent, we'll just click in here. Spine 2 is what we're looking for. Great. I'll go ahead and just center that pivot. It's fine. The axe is interesting. If we're going to be doing an axe pose and we want the pose in his hand, then I'll need to parent the pose to whichever hand we want to use and move the pivot. If I'm just going to just have it attached to his backpack, I can do the exact same thing where I just say pick the spine 2, center the pivot, and I'm good to go. So let's go ahead, just for the sake of demo, let's pick a parent. So we're going to say pick a parent. Oops. And we're going to click the hand here. So we're going to parent this to the right hand. So as he's moving his right hand around in his battle pose, it'll stick to his right hand. I'll go ahead and say, for now, center the pivot here. But when he's holding the axe, I actually want the pivot to be, let's say, edit pivot. And we'll scoot this over a little bit. And yeah, somewhere in the handle, right about here, let's say, is where I want the pivot for the object and then his hand. So we'll say go out of pivot mode, we'll hit W, and now the pivot's on the object, which is nice. And we'll go through here quickly and we'll rotate this around. Now, I also probably, when I was sending this file over, I was like, hey, I'm just going to parent this object to the backpack because I know I'm going to have him climbing a rope and I'm not going to have his axe in his hand. If I am going to send an object over and I want to treat it as something I can have dual wielding or in his hand, I'll probably leave it here at the world origin in my ZBrush file at 000 pointed straight Z forward, Y up. And that's probably, and then I would go through and do this process as opposed to having it in a weird angle on his hand. Another cool thing about this process is when we did the game res version, again, this is the 3D print version we're doing today. Tuesday, when we did the game res version, you can go in here and you can save out. So if we go in here to our custom panel, we can go in here to clothing. So here's the goblin shirt, here's the goblin pants, here's the loincloth for the giant, the loincloth for the goblin, here's the shoes for the goblin, gloves for the goblin, and then under accessories, we have the helmet for the goblin and the troll horns. We have the gauntlet for the troll, and then the armor right here for the goblin, and the shoulder pad. These are the game res versions, not the 3D print versions. Again, they don't have subdivision history. They just have, they're an arbitrary low res with nice textures, basically. And then leg armor. And then here's the goblin axe, and then the troll weapon. So I can just, in the water pouch, I can literally just drag and drop these onto my object or onto my character. Here's the backpack, and use them on different characters. It actually works surprisingly well, their whole clothing system. So, and again, we're going to get into, I just set up my mocap suit again last night. I was, we'll say the stage I'm in right now with mocap, the hardest part is network stuff. So any network admins out there, I don't envy you. Your job is really hard. A lot of stuff that goes into network stuff, configs and protocols and ports, like, oh my god, Windows settings, firewalls. So anyway, now we've moved this around, we have everything parented appropriately. One thing we're not going to have look right is going to be the loincloth. We'll talk about that, and the head cloth. So I should mention that before I sent over these, make sure that anything that's going to be clothing related, and this is in those videos I keep referencing here, the Pose Tool series videos, go to UV map, open that up, and we're going to set it to, let's say, 1024 UV map border of 16, so we really get a nice bleed. And then under texture map here, you can say new from polypaint or just new from UV check, and this will show you your UVs. And if I do new from polypaint, you're going to see we painted just with polypaint white where we want it to be dynamically driven, like cloth simulation will drive these verts. Up here is going to be bound to the body, so as his hips move and his legs move, this will just be bound like a normal piece of cloth on his body, and then this will be dynamically simulated. So again, I didn't send the textures over. We're going to plug those in a second, but I did make sure they had UVs, and I did go ahead and, you know, poly painted, and then, well, here's what you do. I need to do a real tutorial on this shit. So UV map, set your settings. Go in here, say new from poly paint, clone your texture. Texture, select it, flip vertically, export that as a JPEG or PNG, doesn't matter. And then we'll turn all this off. And then I'm going to bring those in separately. So back in Character Creator, we've set up our file. Everything's rigged and weighted. If we want to test that, we got the backpack here. Let me just do a real quick pass through because we're doing this from scratch. Helmet's done, axe is done, backpack's done, shoulder pad's not done. Shoulder pad, pick parent, somewhere up here. And that one didn't work. Base hip, that's not what I'm looking for. So we're looking for R, clavicle, upper arm our forearm probably. Our upper arm. Yeah, our upper arm. We'll try that. Move scale, rotate, okay. And we'll go ahead and center that pivot. And that should probably be fine. Something like that. Okay, so now, and all the other items, remember the body has been passed. We started with, and again, if you're just joining us, I just want to explain this one more time. This creation right here for this live stream on Tuesday explains the process of, hey, we started with a CC neutral base body. We went through and did some morph slider adjustments. We sent that back to ZBrush. We detailed it up, basically. We just took the neutral base mesh and then just sculpted on it and changed the musculature, changed any proportions. When you send models back to Character Creator, you say, hey, where I move the geometry, move the bones along with it, and it'll, as long as you didn't change the vert order or, you know, slice anything or extrude anything, don't change the vert order. Everything will work fine. And then there's a Substance Painter workflow you can do in here. It's this button right here. You can export characters to Substance Painter. It'll export your object as UDIMs. It'll have you can download a export parameter in Substance Painter so that you can export your texture so that Substance Painter can read it. And then when you're done texturing in Substance Painter, you can just come back in here and say update texture in Substance Painter. It'll go through and plug in all of your textures to your body. So that's what we did for the body. Now for the game res stuff, I showed how to make all the high res stuff, and then essentially you're going to export all that high res stuff. Going to make an arbitrary low res. There's no subdivision history between them. You're going to bake them off. You're going to drag and drop that file, that FBX file, as an accessory into your character creator, move it around, do exactly what we just did, only these have nothing to do with a ZBrush file for 3D printing. Those are just pretty game res files with pretty textures, so I can have eye candy and people will click on my videos, but it has nothing to do with 3D printing. And it does have something to do with, hey, I have a game res model here. You can start doing mocap on it. You can send it to Unreal from here. You can send it to Omniverse. You can send it to Unity. All that stuff. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with that game res. But for today, and here's where we swapped out the clothing. So for instance, the troll guy is now wearing his Goblin clothes, and Character Creator did all that work for me, which is nice. So anyway, back in 3D printing land, these again have relationships with a ZBrush file that has subdivision history. And as we move these low res verts around, it's going to move them around. We're going to send those back over. It's going to update my low res vert positions, and we'll have a print file for 3D printing. So let's test our motion here. We're going to click on motion. We're going to go in here to, let's just do a male walk. And well, we're going to see we need to reskin one of those objects, but everything else looks fine. All the accessories look okay. We can do a calisthenics test, but I'm not too worried about deformers because we're going to fix all of that in ZBrush anyways. So let's go ahead and say motion, pose, a pose, go back here. That looked like SD2, I think. Let's see. Nope. Which one is that? Subdivision 4? Maybe. So I'm going to say SDiv4. We're going to go back here. We're going to say transfer skin weights. Since this is just all over the place, I'll just keep default. And that's going to say wherever the body skin weights are, it'll transfer back out to that. And then let's do body rig full body. So that's the calisthenics test if you really want to check all of your weights. Oh, it's another file. It's the little knots. Urgh, sorry. Oh, this brought this in as a prop. I must have accidentally scrolled. No problem. Let's see. I should be able to convert this to... I really don't remember. I thought there was a convert to accessory option when I brought this over. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that. So we have our file. We're going to move this around. We're going to You can bring in an animation. You can just choose an animation. So again, if we have a combat animation, I'm going to go over here to my animations, and I know we have some. Here's my animation folder, motion, studio mocap, single-handed. I don't know, heroic sword. If it ever says that, go over here and select your base mesh here. I need to write that down. Prop to accessory. So here's my animation applied, and just like we did last time too, if you want to go to Mixamo and download those, you can just drag and drop them right into your file, and it'll you can use those. So here's, and if I want them stuck in one place, I can go in here to lock, and that will keep them locked to the world axis. So I just keep them kind of in the middle. So I just go through here, and one thing we do need to fix is that weight. You can see the cloth isn't very dynamic, but everything else looks like it's working fine, minus the thing I brought over as a prop. So motion, pose, a pose, and what do I want to bring over now? Okay, so for the cloth, we're going to go in here to loincloth, and we're going to say, go in here to physics. So we've already turned on this rigid body simulation, soft cloth simulation. This is all in your edit preferences or project configuration. I forget which ones, but both of these things are turned on. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say activate physics. Go into weight map. This is the loincloth. So we're going to load in that loincloth weight map here, and we're going to say okay. And then same thing for the back of the neck helmet cloth here. Activate physics. Load in the weight map here. So now when I hit, and also I haven't set up the capsules yet, but here you can see the dynamic cloth is working, it's flipping around, and it's being weighted. So everything actually looks okay. If you want to, let's say, go back to pose, a pose, if you're having penetration problems, which for a 3D print file, again, I'm not overly concerned about the cloth parts. Because again, depending on the pose, you may want to just go in and make a new cloth object that's posed exactly how you want. But if you want to use this, you can. Just make sure that you go in here, you select your character again, and then you say collision shape. And we can go in here and adjust the collision. So anywhere the cloth is going to interact with your body, for example, the legs here, you can click on the legs. You can have a capsule. You can add another capsule. And, you know, basically they're just bound to bones. So very performance, low-cost shapes are sitting in here, bound to your bones. And then these low-cost shapes are what's going to be pushing and colliding with your geometry, not your high-res, not your low-res object, even though it's low res, it's still not very performant, not as performant as these capsules. So these are what's actually going to be colliding with your cloth object, making it look like your body is doing the work. So make sure you have those set up, and then you just pick a pose. Now I am going to update this really quickly. Let's say everything I've done up to this point I did correctly, and I have an actual file saved for Character Creator. So I'm going to say File, Open, and we're just going to start from. Would you like to save? No. Replace all. So everything we've done up to this point should culminate in a 3D print file that's good to go. And then same thing on the ZBrush side. So this ZBrush file is set up to work with this. Just to play it safe, again, I'm going to say preferences, go Z, clear cache files, and then I'm going to say go Z all. It should recognize all of these as something that it's already dealt with, so all of these are set to update now. Again, nothing's really moving, I'm just relinking essentially. Current pose, we're not adjusting bones, so we'll just say update, and that's going to relink these two files. Whew. Okay, sorry, I've been ignoring the chat over here. The repeat last feature I can do once I'm back in ZBrush. The proxy pose with multiple poses. Yeah, I think I can. Proxy, I may or may not get to that, but over here underneath the playlist here, ZBrush 2022. So anybody wondering what proxy pose is, this is the playlist you want to check that out at. It's ZBrush 2023. It's new proxy pose, creating low reses and doing poses like that. Now, I've never actually used proxy pose to send to Character Creator. It shouldn't make a much of a difference. It's just a low res version of your object. It's verts being sent over. As long as you don't change the proxy pose, which will change the vert order, it should work. But I'll just say right up front, I've never actually done it. Yeah, Twitch. Oh boy, yeah, Twitch, I don't know. I'm not sure what the hell's wrong with Twitch, honestly. Everything else hopefully is working fine. No problem, John. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, exactly. I agree, Lucas. I wish there was a way. Hey, if you find something, let me know. And like where it's like, hey, here's how you manage your ZBrush materials in order to... Because I would assume if you went in there and said, okay, matte cap gray assigned to these objects means when I send these objects out as FBX files, all the ones with a matte cap gray assigned should be in one texture set. I don't know that it's that consistent. If it is, great. I do a test, but in my experience previously, that hasn't been the case. So I have had to go to, like you said, Maya. Polygroup and lower the poly count resolution without splitting it from the main piece. Yeah, I think so. Let me keep a, so I don't lose my place. So proxy pose with multiple poses and lower poly count for... Yes, you should be able to do that with both the ZRemesher and I think Decimation Master too, but I'm not positive. We'll give it a shot. Sorry about Twitch. I'm not sure what's going on there. CC hair system on your characters in ZBrush, or do they have to be created in CC for their hairstyle system? You can create hairstyle. I have never done it, but I have seen other people do hairstyles that they've created externally, brought it in. But for this one too, if I go in here to content, hair, let's go ahead and say real quick, turn off our helmet. Let's go ahead and grab, so there's hairstyles, which is hair and beard and eyebrows, and then there's the individual components. So, and there's even stylized hair in here. So if I want to give him a classic short with some Kevin brows and maybe a Viking beard. It's got the little knot in it. And then we'll go in here to motion, wrinkle check, dramatic male. So once you have your hair set up, and just like the other accessory clothing, you can go through here and you can, you know, just double click it. It'll assign it to the body, scale it appropriately, conform it to your mesh, and then transfer the skin weight. So it's nothing, it's doing a lot of work under the hood that's very useful. So here is him with a beard and a little hair. So we can leave it in now. His helmet cloth is still on, so it's just attached to the inside back of his head. But if we want to, we can see, let's see. Yeah, I guess we got to get rid of his helmet or his hair. But that's okay. He still got a little styling look. Now, if I go Z this back over, it will go Z the hair cards back over to ZBrush, which if that's what you want, that's fine. 3D printing those, probably going to be kind of a pain, so I'm not going to bother. But here's the other thing too. If you did want to sculpt a beard, let's say you're doing like a stylized sculpt, you can absolutely send that over. You can, when you transfer your skin weights, instead of doing, hold on. Also, we'll switch from biframe to real time so it goes a little faster. So yeah, everything's working fine. Claws is working great. So we'll say motion, pose, A pose. Now the difference being, if you bring over an accessory mesh or an accessory and you want to convert it to a cloth object, you'll go in here and you'll say transfer skin weights. If you want to create, oh, there it is, convert to accessory. That's what I'm looking for, but that's from a cloth object. Instead of doing that, what you'll do is you'll select an accessory and you'll say create hair, brows, and beard. So you'll bring, you can always go in here to say create accessory, bring it in, or you can say create hair cloth accessory. But I just do bring an accessory, that will bring it as an accessory, and then you can choose, hey, you know what, I'm going to convert this to a cloth object by transferring weights from the body, or create a hair object by going in here to brows and beard, or hair, brows and beard. So anyway, all very interesting. This actually has multiple. Oh, it's got a little Abe Lincoln. Sideburns. Kevin. Okay. So back where we started. And then we have this set up so we can go from Character Creator. So again, we'll just choose our motion. We'll go to Content, back to our animation, single-handed. And now that we have cloth, so as we're moving around, we hit play, the cloth will work, right? However, if I stop and scrub, you're going to see it's beautifully cached. It won't do that by default. Go in here to edit, I think project settings. Project settings. Turn on under soft cloth, just check on bake animation. So that way, while, and in fact, well, instead of real time, we'll do by frame so that we're getting all of the cloth. So now it's caching all of the cloth movement that's happening, so I can go back through and scrub. Of course, when I brought this file over, his axe wasn't in his hand. That's okay. I forgot that I didn't set that up. So you know what, we'll just do this one. I like this one better anyways. So cache all that cloth first. Cool. And then now I can go through and scrub. We'll pick a pose. Although it looks like that cache, the cloth isn't cached past this point. I'll have to check that out. But like I said, let me see. So I'll have my pose here, and my cloth, and my objects all moved, so all my low-res verts moved. However, I do want to change his face, so we'll go in here to, we have his body still selected. We're going to go in here to action. We can edit the pose too, so we can edit the face or the body. For the body here, it's pretty much just, you can do FK or IK, but you can go through here and just basically rotate around what you want. You can go in here to the mannequin and do what you need to do. You can go in here like to the hand. If you want to make a fist, you can just grab the little palm area here and you can spread the fingers out, or you can curl this into a fist. You can also, what I like to do for those especially, go in here to content, and you can save out your own poses here as well, but you can go into gesture, and there's a ton of hand stuff in here. So if you just want to quick click like, hey, I want to do pointy fingers or prongs or push or reaching, you can just double click and you can say left hand, right hand, or both hands, and that'll go through and change your finger positions here. So we'll do a send out. If it's gonna work, come on, don't make a liar of me. This should work. Let's say left hand. That's kind of weird. Never had it not work before. Anyway, that should move the bones around. And again, like I said, you can save your own hand positions in here, but I seem to have done something wrong. Or, like we said, you can go in here to edit pose. And if we want to go into edit facial, this is what's going to drive the face. So it's set by default to muscle. You can go in here to change the eyes, the mouth, and whatever you want to do. So for example, you can grab the chin and just pull it down, and you can kind of just pose the face around. You can go in here to the eyes, so double click to deselect, and then we'll select the eyes here, and we can move the eyes left and right, up and down, and it'll kind of move the eyelids as well. Or what I could go in here to expression, and you can just double click and tap one of these, and it'll just update to whatever expression you want. So if we want to do like an angry expression here, you can go through here and just have a good starting point to kind of play around with. So we'll start angry, and then underneath modify, you can go through here and change, you know, brow raise upper left, and move these around as needed. So we'll say, okay, this is what we like. Go back here to our scene. Just to play it safe, I'm going to open up everything and say select it all. Now, this is normally if I had the plugin installed, and if you're following along with this playlist here, this Real Illusion, Character Creator, and ZBrush, and or the ArtStation section here. Again, I'll relaunch you to this. So here's all the playlists here. You can check them out. And then ArtStation also has things organized a little bit better for multiple example files and video files. If you're following that, what you would do is go in here to plugins, and there is a ZBrush plugin. It's here. I have it in ZBrush installed. I just don't have it installed in the Character Creator. I forgot. This one, ZBrush Pose Tools. Awesome thing you can use. Definitely check out the video on that. But what I'm going to have to do now, because I don't have the plugin installed, I'm going to have to go in here first and say, hey, record a new pose. That's going to go through every single one of my objects and save a layer. And we'll go ahead and name it. We'll call this Angry Lunge. So it's basically opening a recording layer for every subtool in my scene. And while it's set to record, I'm going to hop back into Character Creator. I'm going to go Z everything back over. It's going to move those verts into the position, and then I'll say stop recording, and then I'll have a layer named in my recorded library pose list that I can switch between. And if you have the plugin installed correctly, which I don't, you can send over your T-pose and your A-pose as well. Or you can do it manually, but... So it's opened a recording layer for all my objects. So again, back in Character Creator, we'll send this over. And instead of using my plugin, I'm just going to go in here to the Go Z. We'll relink. I do know the tear ducts and the eyelashes are separated out when I was sending files back and forth. So that needs to be turned on. We'll say Go Z. And again, it's just moving. We sent over originally low res verts, subdivision level 1, and then we moved them around, and then we sent them back over with a pose recording. Sorry, I'm spending more time on this than I am actual 3D print setup, but I guess it's good stuff to know. So, here we go. Now, we're still recording. I'm going to say save new record. We've already named it. So I'll show you what it's doing. Oh, it's not done yet. Going all high again. I guess we'll see. So basically what it's doing, like I said, is every subtool had a layer record turned on, and then it moved the verts around, and then I turned off the layer record by saying, you know, stop recording, and then we named it Angry Lunge. So if for the pouch, for example, if I go over here to our layers, you're going to see we have a CC pose Angry Lunge turned on for it. If we turn that off, it'll move the pouch back to its original position up here. If we turn it on, it's so what's controlling that is now this library thing. If I turn Angry Lunge off, it's going to turn off all the Angry Lunge layers and put it back to my original A pose. So if I want to, I can go back to Character Creator. We can choose a different pose or, you know, whatever. I can record a new pose, send this over, name it, and then I can just swap back and forth between those two poses using my pose library here. I can just turn these on and off. And then if I ever want to make an adjustment to this layer, I can go over here and say lower res, higher res. We can say edit current pose. That'll turn on record for all the layers, and I can just go through here and make changes to any of these layers. Of course, it's turning on all my poly paints, which I don't need, but it's easy enough to go in here and turn off. There we go. So now, while it's recording, I can go back through here and say, okay, tap this leg here. And if I'm really doing 3D print stuff, and I'll open up the file in just a second. And again, these are all multiple subtools, so I can just hold Control-Shift-A. Also, I can drop down in subdivision level and say, hey, I just want to work on, you know, the low-res object here. I'm going to go through here and sculpt this out and fix the knee. Or I could even do turn on dynamic cloth and have it, you know, simulate against the knee underneath or whatever. You can go in through here and basically fix your wrinkles. So we're fixing our wrinkles, we're moving stuff around, and we're refining our mesh to prepare for 3D printing. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, starting back over. Let me cut back up. CC4 get the error. It says, warning, avatar file requires a content license while we're using a stock. I have no idea. That'll probably be a CC4 question for the character creator people. I'm not sure what that would be all about. Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say it's I've much harder things to learn than ZBrush, in my opinion. But maybe I'm biased because I've been using it for so long. This is not the same live vid. The live vid we did on the ZBrush channel was more game res focused, and then this one's more 3D print focused. Put a character made in Character Creator in my portfolio. Some people think it's just drag and drop. Well, yeah, it is drag and drop depending on how you use it. This allows me to create bespoke characters and not have to rely on, me being, I do rigging in my, I do everything I do in Character Creator. I can kind of do manually, but not to the level and ease of use. Like Character Creator lowers the barrier of it. Like if I was to set up a character with facial blend shapes and facial animations, and then being able to move that geometry and have all that stuff follow and work, and then put clothing on top of it and rig and weight it, like I can do all that, but like it would be a nightmare for me to set all that up. Whereas in Character Creator, I can do it in 5 minutes. Granted, there's limitations. Of course, there's severe limitations doing it manually too. And there's a lot of work you have to be able to do manually that is not easy stuff to set up. For me anyway. So of course the truly very great CC is very little time. I'm interested in buying it. All I have right now is this Real Illusion Character Creator. I'm going to have, after ZBrush Summit, I'm going to have more videos going over the process of everything we've talked about in my live streams recently, which on my channel will be under videos. You can watch this video and then of course the video I'm talking about now. Any change proportions of your character if it is stylized? Absolutely. I have actually. Do I have? Let me see. I have a Mario character. Actually, I guess I can just load that up. Hold on. For example. Now, there are really good stylized characters. I think there's actually some stylized characters in here you can play with. Yeah, so you can do everything I'm doing here for these realistic looking characters, you can absolutely do with stylized characters. And in fact, if you go to the expression wrinkles, there is a realistic expression wrinkles and then stylized. So if you want to do chisel, ripple, pocket, bevel, or groove for your wrinkles, that'll load in that style of wrinkle as opposed to having realistic wrinkles on your stylized character, etc. So is this going to, let me see, hold on just a second. Oh, that was just a shortcut, sorry. File, open. Now this one was just it was kind of a rush test, just to kind of what's it called? Stress test to see how stylized I could go. Because it's one thing to do like, here's a human character and let's make it stylized. And I was like, no, let's go super stylized. So I made a Mario character. No cloth physics on him, but facial's all set up. You know, body's all set up. There's some weighting I need to fix, but you get the idea. It's the stylized hair and stuff, but you could put on realistic hair if you want to. Or bring in your own bespoke stylized leaning hair that's kind of realistic, kind of stylized. But let's see. There are some caveats to this level of stylization that you know, things don't map super great too, and I have to go through, like I said, I got to go through and fix some weights and stuff, but you can see it's fairly effective. And of course I should probably bring in some stylized animation, but actually let's do this. We've been playing around with, what have we been playing around with? Animation, motion, barehanded. Yes. And again, I'd have to go through and, if I was doing this for real, go into iClone and then, you know, adjust these poses and stuff so that it's even got facial animation. I love it. This is too fun. Oh, you know what I should do? Let me see if I can do that. Motion, pose, a pose. Scene. Let's try it. Again, I'm really pushing the limits here because this body's pretty different. Let's say. Let's go in here to clothing. Skirts. Oh, my clothing. Shirts, pants. I'm already liking it. Shoes. So here's the Goblin outfit. Again, this is really kind of a bad test, but you know what? We're already this far. I'll just keep going. Let's go ahead and swap out the hat. And you know what? We'll take the hair off too. Surprisingly, hat medallion could go. Helmet's actually scaled. Oh, I forgot that the hat has built-in earrings. Might have to go edit mesh those out, but it's fine. And the cool thing about when you save these, oh yeah, he's got a wide head too. When you save out your accessories, it'll actually remember. Ah, it works great. It'll remember what joint it's assigned to. So, I think. So when I have this selected and I go through here and I say, hey, pick our parent, it already has the base head picked. That's totally cool. And the pivot's already set. So, anyway, I can go through here and I can edit these shoes as well. We can just do a quick edit mesh. I can also, you can actually go through and you can hide your body underneath, which is totally awesome too. But let's do a quick edit mesh first, since I think they need to be a little bit updated. I love the contrast of his rosy skin and those nasty goblin geometry. These are very not optimized low res, as you can tell. But again, this is just for demo stuff, so not overly concerned. I don't have time to do super duper production. It's mostly just quick and dirty. But again, I think I am going to start using this for super production stuff because it's pretty good, man. I like it. Okay, so let's see if I can remember hiding stuff. Let's go out of edit mesh. Again, I'm ill prepared to be doing these types of tests because I really don't remember everything. It's all not in my brain yet. Okay, I guess just be aware there is a way to go. Oh, there we go. Hide body mesh tool. You can even have these objects and these pieces of clothing automatically hide pieces of your body based on this stuff too. Oops. This one, but not this one. Show all. Get rid of the foot. Get rid of the foot. And in fact, I want to say if I select here, we can say set visibility hide. Okay, sorry. Never actually done this. I'm just trying to remember from reading things. So we got a hide body mesh here. Okay, so I think I grabbed, you know what we didn't do? Let's bring in shoulder pad. That's an easy one. And then under other, let's give him that axe. Oh, you know what? We'll put his backpack in here too. Backpack will move into place. And then the axe is just kind of sitting in here. So I'm going to say parent. To the hand. Set the pivot. Oops. Damn it. Had the wrong thing selected. Oh. Scene. Axe. Pick parent. Hand. There we go. Move. And if you hit E once, it's set to whatever this is, parent rotate, and then this one is set to object rotate, so it makes a little more sense. And this axe, when I saved that axe, it was actually sitting upright and straight, so I didn't have to worry about it being weird. So anyway, here we go. Motion. Go back to scene here. We'll select our character, content, animation. Oh, yeah. And while it's here, we can actually go through and adjust this. He's got a big old face, so that's probably not going to work too well. But you can see, I don't know, like for 5 seconds of making a Mario Goblin, you could do a lot worse. Cool. All right. Now I'm excited again. That'll work. Okay. So yeah, as far as going back to question, as far as impressions go, if you're doing all the character work and bringing in your own accessories, and you're just using Character Creator as a rigging, facial animation, and way to just basically make your character move, I don't think that's a big deal. If you are going in here and saying, okay, I made a base body, but then I just went into a library of assets and just started dragging on jeans and t-shirts and hair, then it's like, well, you know, all the library stuff you put on is somebody else's work, you know? So for your portfolio, that's kind of sketchy. But if it's all your own stuff and you're just using this as a backbone pipeline because you want to be a character artist and have your stuff move around and emote, please do that. That's a great way to learn and understand the downstream effects of modeling choices that you make, how animation works, and how blend shapes work, and how modifying, you know, accessories and pivots, and you know, all of that stuff's good to know. Now, granted, I'm not going to get a job at a place that's like, okay, we expect you to be this super awesome Maya motion builder rigging person. Well, I'm not doing that, so I couldn't say that I could do that proficiently. But for a character artist, just getting your stuff to move around, and it's your stuff, I think it's totally fine. In fact, I would even go so far as to say, hey, that's actually a little better than somebody who just models stuff in an A pose and throws it on there and goes, hey, doesn't it look good? Sure, it looks good. How cool would it be if you'd actually show me that it's on something that moves and you understand how to fix things as they're moving around and model appropriately for things that move? Because there is a disconnect there from excellent modelers, but also excellent modelers for things that animate are two different things sometimes. If that makes sense. Yeah, so yeah, back to the question. Yes, you can change the proportions of a stylized character like crazy. This is one example. You're too kind, Rand. It's one of those things where I know a bunch of like weirdo stuff, but I couldn't match the level of fidelity that you have. Like I couldn't even get close to that. So, you know, that's just where I choose to spend my time, is doing weirdo stuff as opposed to doing awesome stuff like you do. I have a Substance Painter tutorial about this character. This one I don't. I kind of went through it in yesterday's live stream. Which I have here. Yesterday's live stream, we went through the baking process a little bit from Character Creator to Substance Painter and talked a little bit about that. Making a face rig with Keyshot, but keeping my ZBrush character's eyes and teeth. Keysha, that's a good question. So what you can do, so for example, it's like, hey, I love this character, but I want to render it in another program, but I want to, you know, use this. So we're going to take a little bit of a tangent here. I'm going to go in here to File, Export, FBX. Let's do all. And we're going to say Maya. We're going to do Mesh and Motion. Current animation, all. Exports. I also need to do the cloth as a limit cache, but I'm going to ignore that for now. Please forgive me. You know, I'm just going to dump this. I have so much crap on my desktop. So, for example, we have a file in here. It has animations, it has textures, but we want to render it in something else. V-Ray in Maya or Unreal Engine. There are buttons that you can, let me see. For example, if you're going digging in deep into Character Creator and iClone, there it is. There's all sorts of stuff, and again, haven't done it yet, but I seen it done. Hold on just a second. Anyway, there's buttons that you can hit to go from Character Creator right into Unreal Engine with a live link, have your mocap set up, and you can live stream live with your Unreal Engine rendered character if you wanted to. Now granted, that's I think through iClone, not necessarily Character Creator, but I could be wrong. But there's plugins and add-ons and stuff for that that'll do all of that work for you. This is a little bit more manual where you export an FBX, but if we go in here to say, for example, in fact, we can just drop it in. Desktop, modified, Mario test. Drop this in here. We'll go to our classic view because we're not animating this necessarily. Here's what I was. Oh. Boy, it just does not want me to use that. Okay, so here's the object. Here it is with the animation. I have to set up my materials, but that's not too difficult to do. So for example, let's start with the helmet. I'm not going to do it all, but again, I'll just do a tutorial about this later for real. But helmet, normal map. Oop, there we go. Let me see. We're Goblin, textures, and view details. Okay, so we're at the helmet, right? Helmet, normal. Now the first thing you want to do is go in here to your helmet normal. This is weird. Let me see, helmet normal map. Go in here and select, thank you, helmet here, do a subdivide. There's something weird going on with these materials. Let's make a new material here. New mat assigned. Normal map. This is the exact same process. If if you're dragging it into Maya, if you're dragging it into Unreal, drag in your FBX, set up a material, drag in your textures, and then just assign them. So again, helmet normal is assigned. I'm not sure what was up with the original material here. And then the first thing you want to check is if you need to have flip Y turned on or off. It looks like on is what we're looking for. And then go in here and plug in your albedo, helmet base color, roughness, metalness. Oh yeah, we'll go in here to render. We'll say use ray tracing. Turn off denoise. There we go. So basically, go in and plug all your stuff in, and so it'll be nice and textured. You can drag in your lights. It'll be animated. etc., etc. So here's the first initial part of the setup. If we want to go through and change our sky, we can say go in here to sky. Let's choose our ambient sky as our backdrop for now. Oops, sorry, sky. So we're just kind of in a studio setup here, but we can go into our library and we'll do midday fjord rocky. There we go. So, oh, and also we can say bring in a scene add object shadow catcher. So here he is in a rocky ford. We've got the materials assigned, and now we can go through and animate. You can set up motion blur. You can set up whatever you know, set up your motion blur here. You can set up your focus here. We'll say ray trace, depth of field. Whatever you want to do, whatever fancy stuff you want to do, you can go through here and you can render it out. Separate from Character Creator if you'd like. So there's that. Oh, that's why it wasn't letting me. Yeah, it's totally fine. Just go ahead. So, what was I talking about? Go back to the questions here. Oh, so for Keyshot, maybe the same thing. You export an FBX, load that into Keyshot. If Keyshot's able to read all that data appropriately, go for it. Hold on. I'm just gonna, for some reason while I'm streaming, it's behaving weird. Okay, so, okay, back to this. Cool. So a serious question. Character in a pose. I brought him back to a pose manually. All the props, etc., were done on the pose character, so I like to bring them to the A pose. Is there a way? So like reverse engineering. So you have an A pose, and then you posed out the character, and it's not in an A pose anymore. Okay, yeah. This is going to be weird. So if you started in Character Creator and you started with their base mesh and you go Z that over and you didn't change any of the vert order, then theoretically, and it probably would break, but what you theoretically could do is say, hey, take your posed character with that mesh, go Z it back over onto an A pose neutral mesh and say, update the bones to move where my mesh moves. So when the mesh changes, and it's probably going to break, but theoretically you could bring in a posed CC base mesh onto a neutral base mesh. It'll move the bones where they need to be. Now, getting the accessories to follow, that's a tough one. You could probably, or even for an arbitrary mesh, you could pose your CC mesh to get close to your mesh, use wrap 3 or Z wrap to wrap their topology to your topology, use that to bring stuff back, but then at least the body back, but then doing the accessories back, yeah, that'd be tough. Yeah, reverse engineering, it might be able to be done manually, but like it would be so janky. It wouldn't be real elegant, and it probably wouldn't net you very good results. Unfortunately, somebody smarter than me may be able to write something that would be like, hey, if you have a base mesh here, here's a script that'll run this and make sure that things get moved appropriately based on deltas of vert positions and blah, 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 blah. That's not me. Sorry about that. I wish I had a better answer for that. Yeah, sorry about the Twitch thing. Houdini Indie, I think, is $200. I don't think it's free. Or it's a couple hundred. Like, last time I checked, it's been a while. But I think Houdini Indie is pay for, but it's cheap. CC can do animals and base meshes and stuff. In fact, if you guys want to, yeah, there's so many cool things you can go in here. Here's a horse. No. Now, granted, it's not like there's going to be some stuff you have to do with iClone or other Let's see, I'm not even sure. Here's some stylized stuff. Wait for it. And we'll get back to 3D printing in just a second. We're having too much fun in Character Creator right now. So the exact same systems, in fact, even the exact same base mesh to get results like these. You know, for a stylized character, exact same, let's see, motion, wrinkle check, dramatic male. We'll see if he has any expression wrinkles on him. Again, everything stylized, stylized hair, stylized clothing. And for the wrinkle maps, I'm assuming expression wrinkles are turned on, but maybe not. Let's check. Activate expression wrinkles. Check with expressions, and in fact, this is where I was talking about. If we go in here to content, expression wrinkles stylized, we could try bevel expression wrinkles. So I'm going to do a really obvious one, and we'll just switch back and forth between these types. So for example, let's do, let's say motion, pose, a pose. So smile. I guess the forehead wrinkles are the best. Let's go back here to scene, and we'll turn off our hair. So for example, when he raises his eyebrows up, that's going to pull in, or that's going to load in a expression normal map. Same thing for the lines between his eyes and stuff. So these are all different types of expression wrinkles, and you can make your own expression wrinkles. There's nothing stopping you from doing that other than going and doing it. But so for example, these are the bevel type. So if we go back here to content and we do chisel, there's not a ton of them. There's the chisel type. Here's groove. And again, you could load in and make your own. So here's a little more groove type for your wrinkles, like so. And then what that means is when we do our dramatic male now, he'll have groove wrinkles load in based on the expression. For example, there we go. So you'll see them pop in as the shapes dictate. Little nose wrinkles here. But again, if you want to go back to realistic, we'll do deep saggy wrinkles on the stylized character. You can see the difference. Oh, and I have coffee. Yes. Doesn't look terrible. I actually kind of like it, but in some instances, maybe not in others. But again, we'll just do shallow. That actually might work a little better. I did that for a big contrast between them, but so here's with those other, here's with more realistic expression wrinkles being loaded in, but still being driven by the same facial, and also like blood will come to the surface too. You know, when you squeeze your brows together or something, you'll see a little more red show up. So, hey, pretty neat. That was another thing I was going to bring in, like this. Speaking of creatures and stylized, wait for it. There we go. So, facial test on a stylized T-Rex. How fun. Let's see, male posing. Now, I don't think this is using the CC a humanoid topology. I think they went through and did shapes for this specific topology, if I had to guess. But just showing you that it is indeed possible. This is just a silly soft physics spin around. Let's get some motion. Oh, or dance. So here's... dance turn. Let's get crazy. Some of those movements don't translate to a little chicken body quite as well, but you get the idea. Yeah. Create a base mesh inside CC. Leave the proportions space features more or less the way I want. Persistent export to A or T pose. Continue refining modeling in ZBrush. Yes, and that's exactly what we did in this live stream right here. Is that process. Start with the base mesh, go into ZBrush, refine it, send it back, send it to Painter and bake it if you want. Now, as far as looking at your name collectibles, we're going to go back into 3D printing, which is this process right here. So, for example, I did the live stream up to this point where we went through and we saved our poses out and we have a high-res model. What I ended up doing, print. So I did one where he's climbing a rope, and then 3D printed him out. Let me go ahead and grab some of these images here. Recording. Sorry. Marketing. Nope, source. So, for example, so here is this file. I did the climbing a rope thing, saved the pose. I updated the model so you can see. I didn't do a great job, not as good as Rand, but changed the musculature a little bit as when you're posing it out. Your elbow will pop out a little bit, all the anatomy stuff, and also the pants. I just resimulated the pants in Marvelous Designer. I just took his posed body. If you want to know more about that, I think that was a fairly recent one. Maybe not. I do have some Marvelous Designer tutorials. This convert geometry and UVs of Marvelous Designer clothing patterns into ZBrush is kind of what I did just for ease of use. I just took his posed pants, took the lowest subdivision level, threw that into Marvelous Designer, created a pattern from it, simulated it on his body, chose the material type, and then they called it a day. So just updated the pants really quickly for my 3D print file. So then I merged everything together, and then I split it up, cleaned it up, and then I split it up. So if I go in here to solo mode, you're going to see I have key registration for, and I tried to find a natural scene because I'm not an expert at this whole 3D printing thing. I'm very, very much just a hobbyist. So I took all the natural seam lines and split it up and did booleans so that I could go through and print the stuff out separately. Number one, because my build, I have a Mars 3 Pro, which is an awesome machine, and a Benny 5. So if you want to know more about 3D printing stuff, you can just say, there's some Lychee Slicer tutorials and, my reviews of the Mars 3 Pro and the Benny 5 and the Mars 2. My review. It's just me using it. It's not really a review. It's me showing you how it works. They've all worked fabulously. So we have our pieces over here, and then this can all be plugged into each other and work nicely so I can glue everything back together. But really why I'm breaking this up isn't real people would break this stuff up so they could do molds, like a box mold that would work, and you could worry about draft and how things are going to be mold compliant. But really what I did was just split this up so that I could have more objects on the build plate and print them all at the same time and get more scale out of it, as opposed to just plopping him on the build plate and printing him out as one solid mesh. So yeah, once you've done all of that 3D printing process, then you can just export that out, and let's load this up real quick so I can just show you. So you'll drop those files into Box or Lychee Slicer. I do have tutorials. Did I put those on there? 3D print, yeah. On here. So, you know, you'll start with layout and you'll move your objects around, then you go over here to prepare and you'll drop in, you'll do all your hollowing. So if I go through here, you'll hollow out any meshes that you want. It even has a suction cup detector, so you can go through and fix all your suction cups, your suction areas, put in your supports, and then you can export this file as your slice file. Let's go in here to export simulator. So here's at scale. So he's all put together. He's about the size of a Coke can, or your, you know, a little less than the size of my hand. But here's all the different pieces. Oops, let's make it so you can see them all. That print out on the build platform volume here. It's a resin printer. And then to simulate this, basically you've got your resin vat down here at the bottom, and then you're going to drop, this thing's going to go down, it's going to print, it's going to harden the resin based on the image that shows up on your slice file that you sent over. So it'll print, it'll harden the resin, it'll lift up, detach from the FEP, and then lower back down, you know, so that it's just a little slight adjustment, a little 50 micro nano whatever millimeter fraction of a millimeter up, and then it'll harden the resin underneath there, and then it'll go up a little bit and harden the resin underneath there. So it's basically just going through and going you know, print, lift from the build plate, put it back down, print, lift from the build plate, does that 4,000 times, and then when it's done, you've got this hanging upside down in your resin printer. So you take the thing off, you'll put all these into a bath, so it'll get rid of all the resin. You'll put it in a curing machine, and then you'll have an object, which is back behind me, which is all these pieces, which is, I'll get you a little bit of a, more of a marketing view. Group photo, hanging 3D print pieces. Something like this. So here's all your, you know, here's all the key registration, and then your 3D print pieces, and then you're good to go. What I was going to do today was do this process for our giant. I don't know that I'll have enough time, but I just wanted to give you an overview of that's where we were headed with this live stream. Character Creator isn't free to use, but it's one of those things where it's like, it saves me, not only does it save me time, same thing with ZBrush, it's like, well, technically I could do anything in ZBrush and any other program, but it saves me so much time and is so enjoyable to use that whatever the cost is, I'd have to make two decisions. Number one, in the case of Character Creator, and even in ZBrush, there are certain things that I make in ZBrush that I just wouldn't make. If I had to go and make this stuff in Maya or Blender, I just wouldn't make it. I'd be like, you know what? I've had a good run. It's just, you know, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn new things or learn new programs. There's always other good stuff to learn that'll do what you need to do, and sometimes better. But like for Character Creator, if you're like, hey, Character Creator, you can't use that anymore. Everything you just did in this live stream, you have to do in Maya and Motion Builder. I'd have to take 3 or 4 sabbaticals in a row and retrain myself into doing all that stuff bespoke. And then me live streaming it, you know, I'd have to set up systems that I could have, they'd be scalable and reusable, and plugins and scripts and all sort, and a nice UI I'd have to build, and I'd have to maintain that, and I'd have to run checks. Basically, I'm using them as my tech art team or my tech rigging team. It's like I have a $1 million tech rigging team at my disposal for me to do stupid things in. Because the alternative would be, hey, I've got a Goblin character, but I don't have the expertise in order to set up facial blend shapes and convert that stuff to bones for Unreal Engine. Can you do that for me? If you know somebody who can do that, great. But if it's just for a stupid Goblin character, they're gonna have to put in like 2, 3, 4 weeks of work just to get that to work for you. No one's gonna do that. But I can do it now because they've lowered the barrier to entry, made a tool that's made it possible for me to do that. So speed aside, just being able to do what I've just done is worth its weight in gold. Same thing with ZBrush. You know, for me to create the things I do in ZBrush, I don't care what the cost is, because I literally can't do it in any other program. Same thing with Character Creator. Now, again, I could learn how to do it in another program, Cinema 4D, Max Miyamoto, Blender, and do, if you can figure out a Blender plugin that'll do everything I just did in CC, number one, it won't be free. But number two, it'll be free-ish because, you're using Blender, but now you have to rely on somebody in the Blender community to set up that system and maintain that system and maintain GoZ functionality and maintain, making sure if something breaks, you have a support system, or all the things that go into a product you're going to lose out on possibly, or you're never going to, and I say never, but you're going to have to wait around for somebody to set up a system that'll be supported and will have the functionality and maintain that support and maintain scalability and maintain forward thinking and forward looking options and solutions. So anyway, sorry for the diet soapbox, but that's always been my thought on, hey, because I get this on my YouTube channel a lot too, where it's like, why don't you just do all this ZBrush stuff in Blender? And it's like, well, I could, but like, this is fine, and the cost is negligible to what. Now, granted, if you're just a hobbyist and you're not making money, do what you need to do. I make money, so the cost of me having a license for something, it pays for itself in a matter of minutes every year. You know what I mean? That's hyperbole, but it's totally worth it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's an investment in your time, really. Yes, you can do this character creator stuff in other areas. Are you going to? Probably not. So you're not even going to be able to do it. But also, even if you could do it, is the time spent going to pay for itself, or are you going to spend a lot of time to get a worse result, but it's cheaper? I mean, the cost is relative. Yes, there is a dollar amount assigned to something, but my dollar amount is very much tied into my time I'm able to spend on something. My time is the most valuable thing I have, so if something saves me time, that time is money to me, and then it's worth it. But that may not be true for every scenario. That's a good point too. I am having an in-person ZBrush Summit where I think all the attendees get Character Creator license with it, but yeah. But, and again, I don't want all of that I've just said, I don't want you to take that as like, oh, once you learn something, you're done learning. Like, please keep learning everything. But for me specifically, because my time is so limited, anything that will save me time is almost always, even if I don't end up using it that much or that often, it's just a little tool in my tool belt that I'll pull out every once in a while. It's almost always worth the monetary investment for the time investment that it saves me. But again, that's for me. That may not be for you. Yeah, I agree, Gabriel. It's a really nice package to get stuff done that I need to get done. I don't need to get it done, but maybe eventually I will need to get it done because now that I'm able to do some of these things, it's opened up an entire world of cool stuff that I want to do now. Yeah, I totally agree too, Omicron. It's also a great previs tool. Like, hey, yes, if there's a certain instance where it's like, hey, I have a character, but I'm going to do a really nice rig with an awesome team I work with, et cetera, then yeah, certainly do that. But if you want to do a quick test, like you said, like, hey, I've got a character and I'm going to spend 15 minutes getting it walking around, dropping in animations, seeing if it'll work, doing quick, cloth tests, doing quick facial animation tests, then yeah, it's a great intermediary tool as well, just for our previs. God, ZBrush, so we go. You're in for a fun journey, I hope. What advice do you have for students who are new to ZBrush? What are your favorite tools for making mechs? That's another thing I need to go back to, is hard surface modeling. It's been a while since I've bothered. But for anybody new to ZBrush, a good place to start, I'm going to say probably my ArtStation channel. Not because I want you on my ArtStation channel necessarily, I'm not trying to push traffic there, but I do have it broken down into, here's your intro to ZBrush. All these ones with a little folded down corner are going to walk you through, here's intro to ZBrush, So here's, and it's all on YouTube as well. It's just a little more nicely organized in here. So here's 50 videos to get you caught up on like, hey, here's the basics of ZBrush, how to get started. And then all of these videos for our 8 What's New, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Actually, 23 isn't on here yet. On my YouTube channel, underneath my playlists, ZBrush 2023, What's News in here. I should probably migrate that over. But yeah, that would be my suggestion. And again, I'm biased. There probably is a better teacher out there who has a Gumroad or a book or a YouTube channel that will teach you ZBrush as well. I'm not saying you have to learn from me. If you want to learn from me and you're not sick of my voice already, that would be my suggestion for kind of easing your way into ZBrush. And like I said, here's all the playlists. But ZBrush is fun. I would say for anybody trying out ZBrush, if you're new to computers and you're new to 3D, ZBrush is going to be super easy for you to learn. You're going to go in there, you're going to say, oh, what do I have to do? Hit this button, move this here. What do these mean? Okay, great, I'm good to go. Whenever I teach students, anybody who's new to computers or new to 3D, ZBrush is the easiest program for them to learn. The ones who have a really difficult time to learn ZBrush, and I don't hold this against them, there's valid arguments to be made, is like, let's pick on architectural pre-visualization 3D Studio Max modelers. Them trying to learn ZBrush, you come in with, I've been doing architectural previs modeling in 3D Studio Max for 25 years. Now I want to learn ZBrush. So now all the stuff I've been doing for 25 years in this program, I want to immediately come into ZBrush and see recognizable things and do recognizable things for what I want to create. ZBrush may not be the best, or may not be the barrier to entry or the learning curve for that type of work in ZBrush may be really frustrating. It just is a really extreme example. But if you have been using another 3D package for 25 years and you want to learn ZBrush, the initial where you're going to stumble, and again, if you hate ZBrush, then hate ZBrush. I really don't care. But I will say, if you are stumbling hard up front, the biggest hurdle is going to be probably these first 5-10 videos. If you can get into ZBrush, understand documents, subtools, initialize states for primitives, navigation, and you stumble hard here, and file saving and just stuff that you're used to, and lights and materials that are a little different in ZBrush. If you can get over those humps, those initial humps, and some of those are just kind of scattered in here, but I would say, again, those first 5 videos, if you can get through those and you can muscle through it and just scream and punch the wall or pull your hair out, or however you deal with your stress, get through that part, it's all downhill from there. That's your learning curve, is that initial barrier to entry that's a little weird, and it's not even difficult. It's not rocket science. It's just weird. I'll say that. I'll be fair. It's just weird. You got to do a couple weird things in ZBrush that other things you don't have. If you can do those, everything else is just easy. And if I can do it, believe me, you can do it. I am not a rocket scientist, obviously. A brain surgeon. You're very kind, though. Yeah, and you can, so I pick on architectural environment modelers, just because when you do that type of work, you're very cognizant of snapping and being very precise with your numbers and your values and where things go. And ZBrush is less that. You can absolutely do amazing modular environment modeling in ZBrush. It's been done. They had a Hasbro, I think it was Hasbro, ZBrush Summit presentation where they were doing their environments and their 3D print stuff in ZBrush, and it's in their ships. It was all awesome. It was all amazing. Totally doable. It's just those skill sets are more difficult to transfer sometimes because the tool set's a little different. By a little different, I mean a lot different. Cool. And I'll agree with Olicron here. It's what I love about ZBrush, and I use all the programs, or as much as I can, is it makes it about what I'm creating. So while I'm in ZBrush, I have fun modeling in ZBrush. Yeah, there are some tedious tasks, but for the most part, I'm having fun modeling in ZBrush. When I go into another program, it doesn't feel that fun. and I can't go as fast. And granted, a lot of that is, I haven't done it, so I haven't learned the muscle memory and stuff, but some of it is ZBrush keeps things on your screen. ZBrush keeps things, you're working one with the mesh. Yeah, there's some weird stuff in here that you may not be used to, and it may not make a whole lot of sense depending on your workflow and your pipelines that you're used to, but it does make sense for ZBrush and how it treats an object, and how you are kind of one with your object while you work. Granted, you can work in ZBrush where you're over here in a bunch of menus and pulling sliders around, but generally speaking, I keep all my stuff, here on my little custom menu, and then just stay one with my object and have fun just creating in ZBrush. And granted, you are going to, another stumbling block is like organizational systems and subtools and selections and visibility. Those get weird, but then after I get used to ZBrush, I'll go into another program and I'll be like, oh my God, I just want to make a polygroup selection and have it, but now I got to make a selection set, and then I can do this really fast, or I just want to see this, or I just want to move this in this way, or mask this and move this, and then in another program I got to be like, okay, hold on. Oh, this is going to take me 20 minutes in here, which is what I could do in 5 minutes or 2 minutes in ZBrush. And you'll have, if you're new to ZBrush, you'll have the exact opposite reaction. You'll come into ZBrush and go, oh, I just want to do this one simple thing in this program that'll take me 5 seconds, but in ZBrush it takes me 20 minutes. There's a back and a forth there. But I will say, generally speaking, there's a lot more. Oh, actually, what took you 20 minutes in ZBrush, let me string together, my CGMA class here, but here's my CGMA class video outline. And my job for my CGMA class is, here's all the techniques. Now, when you're trying to problem solve, maybe if you do a little bit of this, added with a little pinch of this, and then maybe a few seconds of this, that's your elegant workflow. That's your elegant solution to arrive at a problem-solving technique or a tool in your tool belt that'll get you to create what you're trying to create effectively and quickly and efficiently. And I can do that a lot more in ZBrush than I can in other programs. It is a lot of stuff, but all that stuff can add up to some really interesting, elegant solutions that just don't exist in other programs. But again, that's because I spend a lot of time in ZBrush, so I am absolutely biased. So everything coming out of my mouth right now is pure biased propaganda. But it's also kind of what I believe too. Just, but again, coming from me, so grain of salt. Human body base, which I want to paint on. Which software can I use? You can use really any 3D program worth its salt at this point. You can do that with. Granted, like in ZBrush, you can poly paint and then transfer that to a texture. In other programs, you're probably going to paint directly on the texture on a low-res version of your mesh. That's ZBrush's the polygon handling mixed with painting solution. Yeah, and learning along the way is much more fun than doing. I would agree with that. That's also my brain too. I like to learn stuff. So I agree with it. But some people learning something, and that's actually something I had to learn too, is like high school, towards the end of high school, I started, and then in college, and then out of college, I started learning how to learn, and then I started enjoying the learning process, where up to that point, learning was kind of like pulling teeth. It's like, I just want to do something cool. I don't want to learn. What is all this documentation? I just want to jump in and start creating. And there are some programs that are better or worse, how they're set up and expectations where you can just jump in and learn as you go. It's almost like playing a game with no tutorial. You just jump in and you just start playing, and next thing you know, you kind of learn the game as you go. And then there are other games that, set up at tutorial levels and make sure you get the mechanics and make sure you understand the visual language and messaging that it's getting. So same thing with programs. But for complex things, and I would throw this in here too, this, like Character Creator, absolutely tremendously lowered the barrier to entry to a lot of really complex systems. However, they're still complex systems. So if you really want to learn it, for me, and I'll show you my notes. This is how I learn. And I'm not a super smart person, so keep that in mind when you see this. In order for me to learn and retain, I will have, these are my notes. So here's my Miro board of notes that I've taken. And sometimes those notes are literally, you know, me going through and learning, what is it, like skin gen and stuff. I got some really long ones in here, like skin gen. I don't know where to start with skin gen, so I just started with the documentation, and I literally rewrote all of the documentation while I kind of messed around with it. Granted, that's not the best way for me to learn, because applying what I'm doing, making videos, live streaming it, and teaching is how I really learn, and get it stuck in my head. All the places I stumbled in this live stream where I'm like, oh, I don't know how to make a prop into an accessory, because I didn't learn it. I've never done it. I may have written it down somewhere, but it's not stuck in my brain yet. Now, but I can go find it probably. I can just go in here and say search, hopefully, for prop, and, you know, go through here and just see, you know, where I've mentioned prop, and see if I have some notes on here on how to convert it. Or I can just go to Google, and then once I find that out, I'll add it to my notes. The reason I have it in Miro right now is it's easier for me, like instead of going into Notion or Google Docs, I can just go through here and I can write down a bunch of data, and then I can categorize that data as, like, you know, different types of operations, and then I can zoom out, and then I can compare. Actually, I have another version. Speaking of Character Creator and rigging, I don't know what's in here, so I don't want to show you. Sorry. I'm not being secretive. It's just I'm not sure what is on there, and how, if it should be in your eyes. So here's all my rigging notes, you know, and ooh, that's a long one. So here's me going through Maya Learning Custom Rigging for Beginners YouTube channel, and literally going through, I think this is their film rigging setup, and just trying to understand and writing down and taking documentation, so I have the data here. And then instead of doing a Google Doc, I just put it in Miro, and if that way it's flexible. So if I, in this section, if I want to look at all of the information I have from all my different rigging sources on joint placement, I can go through and look for that joint placement color, and then I can put all of the joint placement data I have into one area really quickly and easily, as opposed to, let me search all of my Google Docs and all of my Notion pages and look for this, and then copy these into another document, and then try to remember like where those things are. I just do it all in Miro. Now, eventually, yes, if I do have all my topics and everything's nice and linear, then I can copy and paste this and put it into Confluence or Notion or wherever. But while I'm just kind of gathering, scraping data and gathering and organizing, then I just do it in Miro. And again, all the stuff I have here isn't stuff that's in my brain. I have it here because it's not in my brain. But it will be there eventually, or at least some of it. And then then I can go back through and remember, like, oh, here's what I'm walking through now. So, for example, all this stuff I'm doing now, here's the information and data for what I did for the Hyperreal Troll variant and the Goblin 3D print process. So when I go and teach the ZBrush Summit stuff, I'll have my notes and my outline. And then when I do my videos for YouTube, I've got an outline here that I can follow, and all my data that I can, you know, and here's the full body Mario neutral base that I showed you guys. Here's all the notes that I went through for that, and all the stumbling blocks and other resource videos that other people have done that are similar. They didn't push it quite as far as I did. They had a similar process with Character Creator, but I really went for it, and they stayed a little safer, but the result was actually better than mine. So they were a little smarter than I was, but yeah, anyway. I don't know how useful that information was, but yeah, polygroups in Maya would be awesome. Yeah, sorry for the Twitch. I'm just going to stop streaming to Twitch. I hate that I have to do that, but I don't know how to fix it. I'm afraid to share the Mario. I don't want Nintendo to come crashing down on me. Actually, let's load up this coyote. Save no, replace all. Yeah, and it's all, yeah, so it's the mural, you know, this is just it's also nice to have a visual representation as opposed to, let me go, and I don't know, your brain may work different though. This is a nightmare for some people, whereas for me, I'm like, no, all the pages are right here. I can just see all the pages at once if I want to. That's really all this is. But for a lot of people to come in here and look at this, they're just immediately like, this is gross. Don't ever show me. I don't ever want to see this even in my peripheral. And I don't disagree with those people. But this is just better for me. Yes. And in fact, speaking of Miro, it seems like everything I bring up, I have anything on. Do I have... I do have a Miro playlist. Speaking of pure ref, if you... and this is, again, just my opinion. If I am gathering reference and I have a team of concept artists and we're all trying to figure out like, oh, here's our reference. Instead of everybody sending puref files through email or Slack and trying to remember and source, like concept artists don't use source control. I know I'm painting with a broad brush here, but let's be honest. They just have files, and files are saved locally. Files are saved on a swap drive. Files are saved maybe in source control, but I doubt it. So you just have concept stuff everywhere. Miro is a great place to put all of your images, categorize it in a frame, label it. Everybody can go in and look at it, rearrange things, leave comments, organize stuff, and it's all here, as opposed to a puref file that you have to swap between yourselves and try to remember what's most up to date, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, again, I'm biased, but let's do a little dance turn here. So again, we've been talking about stylized characters, and here's another version of that. And then let's even check the facial animation here. And again, this probably isn't the CC-based topology, so you would have to set these shapes up yourself, but you can. The system is set up, the naming is set up, so all you got to do is go in here and create your shapes. It'll take some work, but it's doable, you know, so that's the cool thing, for me anyway. Cool. All right, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. I didn't get to the fixing for the 3D printing as far as like how to clean it up, but we'll do it another time. I think we did some good information here. I'll go ahead and show you the 3D print file that I need to fix. So let's see, Character Creator, Troll, Gear for Print Posed here. So I've already showed you the Goblin, how to go through and pose that and then bring it back over and save the pose. So he's all broken up and ready. He's already been printed. And then I'm going to need to get a bigger printer because he is a big boy. And then I would go through and merge him down, split him up, you know, and see how I would need to divide him up in order to get him to print out natively for me. Or I get a bigger printer and I can do fewer pieces, but still get what I need out of this. But anyway, that's the final result, hopefully, eventually, someday, is... And this rope right here can be real, because there's holes in his hand and his feet. So if I go in here, I can literally pass like a piece of twine through his hands, and then I put a little Boolean hole through his feet here so they'll grab on. So it will actually... The rope will be real. I don't need to 3D print that. But everything else can just be 3D printed. Yeah, collabs. Yeah, you can have synchronous and asynchronous conversations on Miro rather than, you know, just passing files back and forth. Poses that are copyrighted for public use or company use. I'm not sure. This is all stuff I'm doing just for kind of like for fun. Like again, I'm not going to take that Mario and then pose him and then sell him. You know, that's this guy I probably could, but then. You know, I did start with the birdcage animation that was in CC, but I did modify it quite a bit. So I don't know if that's a copyrighted animation on that pose where that lands, honestly. I'm not sure. For assets, I'm a little more sure. For poses and animation, I don't know. Good question. Features that you wish ZBrush had. One that I just thought of today was being able to merge by subdivision level, because I do that anyways for my 3D printing, so that would be one. I have a list of things that would be cool, but I don't know. I just go with the flow with ZBrush. Yeah, exactly. Modify 10-15%, get you out of legal trouble. I tend not to try to be in legal trouble. Even doing the Mario stuff's probably questionable, but cool. Anyways, thanks everybody. I know it was a very disjointed, kind of weird live stream that I was not prepared to really talk about some of these subjects, as you can tell, but hopefully there's some fun information in there. I'll go ahead and do a sizzle video and post it, and then hopefully anybody who needed this information will have it. And then I will have, after ZBrush Summit, I'm going to have better videos on YouTube, and then we'll start getting into, again, I got my Rococo suit set up on my laptop here, so I'm going to start doing my own animations and facial animation, and so I'll do my own Mario jump. And we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I don't know, stick with me, give me some time to acclimate, and then we'll get this stuff into Unreal, and I don't know, we'll make our own Mario game. No, I will not do that. Just kidding, Nintendo. Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you.